Welcome to MGAA Conversations, our new podcast channel where we'll be discussing with an exciting number of guests all things related and topical within the ever-growing MGA community. Hello and welcome to our latest exciting episode of MGAA Conversations podcast. Today I'm delighted to welcome Claire Russell, founder at Mental Health in Business, to share her story and insights on an extremely important topic within our industry. Claire, very good morning.
Hello, it's really good to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. So let's get straight to it. So Claire, could you sort of share with our listeners your journey in becoming the founder of Mental Health in Business?
Yes, I would love to. The challenge is how to distill it down into a succinct response, but I'll do my best. I'll do my best to do that. Look, I started this business 6 years ago, and it's fair to say that this has become a real passion project for me. And it's really become, doing this work has really become my soul's work. And I never imagined that this is what I would end up doing. You know, I started out my career at the age of 16 in an insurance brokerage. And by the time I was 20, I had started my first insurance broking business. And I thought that that's what I would do for the rest of my working life. I thought that I would own and run insurance businesses. It seemed to be that I was quite good at doing that. Then in my mid-30s, I experienced for the first time, what it is to experience mental illness. And I had what I describe as a mental breakdown. And that was a really eye-opening experience for me, because until that point, I regarded myself as incredibly resilient, super strong. Stress and pressure were just like water off a duck's back. And I never imagined that I would experience mental illness. So it really did open my eyes, and it got me very interested in the subject of mental health. And I was in a very fortunate position that following my illness, I was able to take quite a lot of time off work. Not long before that, I'd sold my business, my first business. And so financially, I was able to take a chunk of time off work. So I took nearly 2 years off. And during that time, I started the process of retraining in mental health. And it wasn't really that my intention was to do anything with that as a business, actually, at that point. For me, it was more that I wanted to learn about mental health. I wanted to understand my own mental health and my own well-being better, and I wanted to be in a better position to support other people as well. And then I came back into the insurance industry and invested in another brokerage after a couple of years, and I started to bring the things that I'd been learning into that business, and we trained some people as mental health first aiders. And then after about a year after that, I lost my partner to suicide. And that was really the catalyst for me to decide that I wanted to do more. I really wanted to be part of driving change in terms of how we address mental health within the workplace. And so I set this business up about 6 months later. And, really everything that we do is all about how do we improve our collective experience of mental health and well-being? How do we get better at handling mental health and supporting mental health and wellness within an organizational setting, within businesses, within the workplace? And ultimately, how do we reduce the number of people who die every year by suicide?
So could I ask you, just before I sort of move on from into a bit deeper, what sort of level of support did you have around you when you were suffering from your own sort of mental breakdown as you described?
None in terms of what was available within the workplace. And I don't blame anybody for that. I think that was very much, well, I kind of do, but I think that was very much indicative of what it was like at that time. And, that wasn't unusual for people to have that experience in terms of not being well supported within the workplace. I was very fortunate in that I had really good individual and personal resources available to
Mm,
me, and I had a very supportive family and friends network, and so that's where my support came from. But there wasn't anything that was available to me at that point in terms of within the workplace.
it's incredible, incredible story. So, so moving forward in terms of your own experience, how would you assess, if we looked across the industry, how would you assess, the toolkit and, for, looking after well-being of sort of employees, beyond that sort of family members, are you positive on that? Do you feel there's a lot way to go? What's your assessment?
Within the insurance industry
Yeah, yeah,
particularly,
yeah.
I think that we've come a long way. I think in the 6 years since I started this business, I've seen a lot of movement, positive forward movement, um, and there's still a long way to go. I think there's there's a much higher level of awareness now. Certainly, business owners and business leaders in the insurance industry are much more aware of what their responsibilities are, taking it more seriously. I think the pandemic had a huge impact in a number of ways. Obviously there was a huge mental health impact, a negative impact of the pandemic, and and also I think what it helped to do was to raise workplace mental health and wellbeing further up the agenda. So, whereas 6 years ago, when we started this business, a lot of the conversations that I was having with leaders of businesses, I was really having to make a business case for business leaders to invest in workplace mental health and well-being. The conversations changed a little bit now. So it's not so much that business owners and leaders in the main need to be persuaded of that. It's more that they really need to look at what they're doing and making sure that what they're doing is wise, and that they're putting in place um, initiatives and programs that are really meaningful. Because there is a risk. There is a risk with this type of thing that it can end up being a box ticking exercise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I was going to ask you that. Do you still see that there's, a level of stigma attached to sort of, the mental health and well-being? Is that something that the industry still needs to try and overcome? Because
definitely.
I suppose the observation would be I'd be really interested in your insight. If you look at a generation sort of piece, and you see this in many articles and the press and social media, that if you go back a generation, then well-being and mental health, there was never really an issue at that point, and now it seems to be, potentially seen as a bit of stigma and a fad. What's your insight that in terms of if you went back a generation, in terms of where it wasn't so sort of publicised and talked about?
Yeah, so I think there's a few layers to that question. I think um, stigma is still a very significant barrier, for sure. I think because there's been a lot of awareness raising activity that's happened over the last 5, 6, 7 years, um, I think that in a general sense, we are talking about mental health and well-being more openly. It's a conversation that's, it's happening within every organisational setting that I go into.
Right.
My team and I, probably about 3/4 of the work that we do is insurance industry. So we work with lots of insurers and brokers. Um, and then we do loads of stuff, outside of the industry, and um, in lots of other sectors. But just speaking particularly about what we're seeing within the insurance industry, um, that awareness raising that's happened over the last 5, 6, 7 years has helped to make this a more common conversation. So it would be a very rare business now that there's this conversation isn't happening. Where there's still a gap is it's still really difficult for people to put their hand up when they are struggling and say, I'm struggling with my mental health, I need help. That's where there's still a real barrier, and where there's still work to do to create conditions of psychological safety in every workplace so that every individual feels safe to be who they are, to ask for help when they need it, and to know that they're not going to be judged for that, and that that's not going to be held against them in any way.
So Claire, picking up on that theme, and as I might know the answer to this question, but really interested in your insight. Do you feel it's easier for a new organisation to sort of embrace the sort of mental well-being and mental health of its employees and create that environment and culture where putting the hand up is far more easier and natural than maybe sort of established sort of larger organisations? Or do larger organisations have the bandwidth and obviously the size to be actually move that quicker? What's your experience certainly in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I don't know if there is a one answer to that. I think that uh, some of the challenges that come with, and this kind of picks up on um, something that you mentioned in the previous question as well. I think some of the challenges that exist in an existing business where you've got people from various generations, people that are at different stages of their career, they bring a very different perspective. And we'll just talk specifically about the perspective that they have around mental health. It's certainly true that the older generation is likely to have had an experience where in their throughout their working life, mental health and well-being wouldn't have been something that has been talked about within the workplace. When they were in the early stages of their career, um, it wouldn't have been something we would have ever talked about in the workplace. We would never have been, running things like mental health initiatives. Um,
Mm.
and and there's probably, and certainly I see this a lot with the organizations that we work with. There are attitudes sometimes and beliefs that are held by those people that we should be able to just be resilient and dust ourselves off and leave our problems
Mm.
outside of the door,
Yeah.
and I understand where those attitudes come from. That's kind of the attitude that I was surrounded by when I was in the early stages of my career. So I get it. But then if you look at the younger people who are coming into the industry now, coming through the industry, our future industry leaders, they're bringing a very different perspective. They have very different requirements. They have very different views around mental health. So there can exist something of a generation gap there. There
Yeah.
can be
Yeah.
I guess a bit of conflict really between those two opposing views. And so you might have one group of people looking at the other and thinking that they're not as resilient as they should be. And I've heard the term snowflake generation.
Right.
Not a term that I'm very comfortable with, but it's not a very nice term. But I understand its context. And then you've got sort of the younger generations who that they just have different expectations. They expect their employers to provide things like well-being initiatives and well-being related benefits. They're probably more interested in things like well-being benefits than they are the pension that's being
Yeah.
provided.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
that
Good point.
that
Yeah.
that they're turned on by different things. They expect different things. They so we've got to find a way to bridge that gap, right? We've got to find a way um, to ensure that those opposing attitudes are kind of understood, and that we can work with each other and try to break down any kind of misunderstanding and miscommunication that can exist because of those different views that people might have.
And so, given your experience, and obviously as you shared, you work 3/4 of your sort of clients are in the insurance industry. do you find that if you're working with a larger organization where you have a section of sort of maybe experienced people and older people, and then you've also got younger people, that the challenge is trying to fuse those two generations together to actually, to get everyone to sort of to buy in and hopefully have those principles that, it's brave to, and it's not a problem by putting your hand up. But is that obviously sometimes always a challenge when you've got those two subsects in an organization?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, generally speaking, when we work with a business, we're working with them at an organizational level, and we'll be delivering initiatives that are designed to reach everyone in the organization. And my preference is always when we start our work with an organization that we start off with the senior leadership team, the exco, whatever the senior leadership team looks
Yeah.
like, because you really need their buy-in. You really need them on board with what you're trying to do. And otherwise, what happens is, we'll be working with kind of middle managers and other managers, and they're really on board and they're really kind of fired up, and they can really see the positive business benefits, not just the human benefits, but also the positive business benefits of what we're doing. And that what they'll say to us is, yeah, but this is all good and well, but the thing is, the exco or the senior leadership team, they don't see this. They're not going to have the same beliefs, and so we're going to have this kind of, we're going to hit a wall when it comes to trying to get things through, because the senior leaders are not of the same mind. So yes, it is about trying to get everybody on the same page. Trying to um, really deepen that understanding as to, actually what the organizational responsibilities are, you know, how those organizational responsibilities are divested and to whom, what the positive human impact of doing these kind of initiatives and doing them wisely and well and in a meaningful way, and also what the positive business impact is. There's an incredibly powerful positive business case for investing wisely into workplace mental health. Ultimately, it will have a positive impact on the bottom line, and we can evidence that. So, it's really getting the right message through to the right people so that they can really understand, okay, we've got to all get on the same page here, and actually, there's a plethora of benefits in us doing this.
And that's a great point around the business benefits, and from that bit. So again, in your experience, what are sort of a couple of the examples where you see where through your sort of engagement and your packages, you see those sort of business benefits sort of emerge. I'm sure our listeners would be really interested to hear a couple of those sort of examples where a happy workforce and everything else and is generates value throughout the business. Can you share a couple of examples with us?
Yeah, 100%. So, um, it sort of breaks my heart a little bit that when we're talking about things like this, that we've got to kind of keep bringing it back to the um, the kind of financial considerations, but actually there is such a strong financial business case that it's a bit
Yeah,
of an easy win, actually, if you can really get that message across. The cost of mental ill health, poor mental health, to all businesses is really, really very significant. So if you distill it down, on average, across all industries and sectors, on average, the cost of poor mental health is around about £4,000 per person employed per year. Now that's on headcount,
incredible,
not per person within your business that
incredible.
has mental illness. Headcount.
Yeah,
So around about £3,500 to £4,000. It's higher in the insurance industry. So that's on average. That's the average figure that I just gave you. In the insurance industry, it's probably something like 4,500. So it's considerably higher in the insurance and financial services sector. And there's all sorts of reasons for why that is. So by investing wisely into the right kind of initiatives that are meaningful and that reach the people that they need to reach in the business, businesses can evidence a return on investment of somewhere between 5 to 1 and 8 to 1, significantly impacting their bottom
yeah,
line. So that's a really powerful business case for wise investment into workplace mental health. But from a human perspective, from a day-to-day what's it like to work in our business
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
if it people feel valued when they see their organization show that they genuinely care, and that this isn't a box ticking exercise, and this is something that we're investing in a meaningful way, because we want the people in our organization to have conditions of psychological safety. We want them to be supported, to be able to thrive, whether they experience a mental illness or not. And
Yeah.
that's the important thing. There will be a significant percentage of people in every business right now that are living with symptoms of a common mental health disorder. Those people need to be supported. The law requires that those people are supported, and everybody else also deserves the opportunity, even if they don't have a diagnosable mental health condition, they deserve the opportunity to work in safe, healthy working conditions where stress levels are not at an untenable level, and where they're supported to thrive and experience a good level of wellness day to day at work.
Very, very powerful message, and some sort of startling statistics there in
Right.
terms of the cost. Really sort of startling. I'm sure our listeners will be, you know, very surprised at that sort of those sort of
Mm.
numbers. That's incredible. So we at the MGAA obviously are delighted to be partnering with you and your organisation as a embedded benefit for all of our members. Which will attach sort of later on sort of this year. So, can you share some exciting things which our members can look forward to? That would
Yeah.
be that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so looking forward to launching this. We're really looking forward to working with your team more closely, and to working with your members. So there's going to be a number of things that will be made available to MGAA members as we move into the second half of this year. So we'll be delivering two mental health first aid courses. So they'll be running regionally. We haven't decided yet, have we, Mike, on the exact locations? But we'll be
Not
running
yet,
them
no.
regionally. There'll be
Yeah,
two
correct.
locations, um, and there will be up to 16 places on each of those courses. That's a full 2-day adult mental health first aid certification. So it's a MHFA England training. It's the only form of mental health first aid training that's recognised by the Royal Society for Public Health. It's the absolute platinum standard of mental health first aid training. That's a really key thing for your members to have access to. All businesses will have physical first aiders. We all know that that's a legal requirement. It hasn't been a legal requirement up to this point for businesses to have a mental health first aider, which is kind of odd on the basis that in this day and age, there's a greater likelihood of somebody experiencing an emotional or psychological injury at work than there is a physical injury at work.
Right.
And that legal requirement will be coming down the line very shortly. It's been debated in Parliament a number of times, and it's received overwhelming support. So that will be coming. So your members having the opportunity to send somebody along to do that training is going to put them ahead of the curve when that legal requirement comes down the line. So that's really powerful
Excellent.
training. Everybody that does that training says that it is truly life changing. So yes, they'll be coming and doing that training in the context of their role within their organization, and it will have massive, massive positive benefits for them outside of work as well as in work. We're also going to be running 2 cohorts of a very specific training for managers and leaders. So there'll be 2 cohorts of that, up to 25 people in each cohort, and it's a 2-part training. So there'll be 2-hour workshops for each cohort, and that's really, I would describe that as our flagship training. I think managers and leaders have such a crucial role in the culture that exists within any
Yeah.
organization,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
all of the research looking at workplace well-being points very clearly to the importance of managers having specific mental health training. So that's again really powerful. They will get so much out of it. It's very practical, and it really gives them the practical tools and skills that they need so that they can support the people in their teams in a way that's appropriate to their role as a manager. So it doesn't make them a mental health expert, doesn't need to. It's about giving them the tools and skills that they can manage people well and support them in a way that's appropriate. And then the last thing, for now anyway, is there'll
Yeah,
be
correct. Yeah.
4 quarterly wellbeing webinar sessions. And again, we've not decided between us yet exactly when those are going to be delivered, but they will all be powerful, engaging, empowering, evidence-based, and really looking at current issues, and with the purpose of really giving people some practical tools and knowledge and skills that they can take away and put into practice.
Fantastic. Well, I think, Claire, that's enormously exciting. We can't wait
Yeah,
for partnering with you. As you say, that's where we will start from.
yeah,
Clearly, the more demand we get from our members in terms of using your toolkit and engaging with you, then the more the association will meet that member's demand. So, without a doubt, it's a very, very exciting start, and we look forward to developing that sort of forward as we go through. So Claire, all I can like to say now is just thank you very, very much for all of your sort of deep insight. It's been absolutely fantastic listening to you. I can't wait in terms of sort of engaging with our partnership, sort of as you've described. I'm sure our members can't. And again, thank you very, very much for your time. It was extremely powerful session. So thank you again.
great. No, it was a pleasure. Really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm looking forward to getting everything launched together.
Many thanks for listening. We welcome all feedback, so please get in touch with your suggestions on topics and future guests. Please don't forget to subscribe on your chosen platform so that you don't miss out.